Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Xstream. I'm Jasmine Kelly, here with a special guest, TJ Rainsford. He is a technology executive and a lecturer in the College of Information at University of Maryland. Hey, TJ, how's it going?
Not too bad, Jasmine, and yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. Thank you so much for joining us. So I've got a few questions for you. Our students are preparing for their prototypes. So they are in the development phase. They're getting ready to test them out. And, we called you here to kind of give them some tips. What do they need to consider? What are some things that they can think about to be successful during this process? So my first question for you is, what's your advice for teams who are struggling to align their prototype with their original business plan or technical approach?
I would say that more than likely their prototype isn't aligned with their original business plan and their technical approach. That's part of the process. This is an iterative process that you go through. You start off with, the original idea, the original technical plan. And as you go through it, you're going to discover certain things don't work right, So you're going to have to go back and you're going to revisit it. That's part of what you do as an entrepreneur. That's part of what you do when you're developing anything new. The trick is go back to what was your original why? What drove you towards this solution? Does it still align to that? Does it still meet the objectives that you had set out for yourself? And in our case, the expectations of the competition. You want to make sure that it's still achieving the goal that's laid out from X Foundry. But you also want to make sure that it does meet with what you originally thought about. What was your original conception of the problem? And how does it continue to align with that? So it should be expected that it's going to change a little bit, that it's going to evolve. You just want to make sure that it's still kind of solving the problem that you originally defined at the beginning of the process.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So I'm hearing that it's always going to change, it's always going to evolve, but just think about, why did you originally start this? Who did you originally start it for? What are we trying to accomplish here? I love that. So what are some of the most important considerations when you're finalizing a prototype before your public demonstration, before you have to put it out there in front of everyone? What do you need to consider?
This is going to sound a little silly, but does it work? And I mean that quite sincerely. Back in the day, for many of our teams, this is ancient history. But back in the day, I remember Bill Gates going to a big production launch of one of the latest Windows operating systems, and it blue screened in the middle of the presentation. And that's what you want to try to avoid. It's not going to be perfect. It's a prototype. It's not going to do exactly what you want it to do. It's going to have some catches. It's going to have some bugs. Understand what those bugs are. If it's a recurring thing, you want to be able to at least explain to the people that you're presenting it to that we know that this is a problem, we're addressing it, that we were expecting this to happen. One of the best things that you can do is if a bug does occur in the middle of the presentation, you want to be able to say, yeah, we knew that was a potential outcome of this. We're already working to address it. But this is a prototype. It's not going to be perfect. It's going to do some weird things. Please, please, please test it. Test it. Go through a couple of examples of walking through the presentation. Don't do it at the last minute. And if it is a last minute thing, you know that there's going to be a break point. Make sure that you know what that break point is and make sure that you can actually explain it to the people that you're presenting it to.
I like that. So what are some of the most common pitfalls that teams face when they're transitioning from early prototype to demo-ready versions? And how can they avoid some of these pitfalls?
I think the biggest one is trying to do more. Okay, can we pack more into that solution? We got this great idea, maybe we can make it do this. Keep it to brass tacks. Keep it to what is going to solve the fundamental problem the way you originally defined it. This is why I always like to go back to, what was your why? Where did you start from? What was the original problem definition? Not the identification of the problem, but how did you define the problem? How did you see a solution to this big, in our case, a social grand challenge, Can we come up with something that meets that need, but always stick to the fundamental things that you need it to be able to do? Don't get wrapped up in the bling. Don't get wrapped up in adding features in. That's part of the life cycle. you'll have an opportunity, especially if you're a winner of the competition, you'll have an opportunity to continue that development life cycle. Keep notes about it. Keep notes of all of those great ideas. You're going to come back to it. But at the end of the day, if it doesn't meet the bare minimum requirements for solving the original problem that you defined, then that's going to be an issue. So make sure that you're always getting back to, does this meet the fundamental requirements, so that what you're showing to the audience is a fully baked idea and not something that's a loose conglomeration of a bunch of different things.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is, again, stay true to that why. Why are we doing this? What is the bare bones solving of that problem? How do we solve the problem? And staying focused on, hey, let's not look at all these different things. Yeah, this might sound cool. Hey, these other people were doing this, but who are we solving it for? Why are we solving this?
This is one of the challenges that I think any development team runs into. Is the ideation part is the fun part. Coming up with the grand ideas, coming up with the unique things that we can do with it, the funky things that we can add into it. That's delaying you from doing the fundamental work to deliver a prototype. Okay, so sometimes at some point in time, somebody in the group's got to say, enough. We got to focus on actually delivering just the prototype that meets the bare requirements.
That's good. And so, what are some key signs that a prototype is ready to become a minimum viable product? So we've got them iterating, we've got them, testing it out, but how do they know it's actually ready to become a minimum viable product?
This is tricky because you want to get to that point. You want to be able to kind of go out and launch something so that people can touch it and feel it and play with it, right? I think some of the key things that I look at are, does it work reliably? Can we? That doesn't mean it doesn't have bugs. Okay, there are going to be use cases that you can't always test for, and it's going to break. But does it work reliably in the vast majority of circumstances? Okay, does it meet the fundamental needs? Does it do what you want it to do? Right? Does it meet that solution that you came up with for that problem that you defined? Right? And can you actually hand it to somebody and it's intuitive enough that you don't have to spend a lot of time explaining it to somebody? I think that that's where user testing becomes a really critical component here, even if it is rudimentary user testing. Is you don't want to think that you've got a solution that if you hand it to somebody else, they can't use it.
Right.
Okay, that's a failure. You have to be able to hand off something that somebody can pick up and go, yeah, I kind of get this. I can sort of figure it out, and hopefully it's a little bit more than just sort of figure it out. But again, meeting those bare requirements reliably, and something that somebody wants to pick up and use, because otherwise, being a minimum viable product, if it's not something somebody wants to use,
Right.
That's a failure point right there.
Yeah.
Right. Those I think are the key requirements, and part of it is just belief. Quite frankly, I mean, a lot of people might not talk about it that way, but do you believe you have something? Do you believe you have something that somebody's going to want to use because it's going to solve a fundamental problem, right? And if that's where you're at, then you got to, at some point, you got to make that decision to throw the dice and throw it out in front of people as a minimum viable product.
So making sure we're keeping in mind, who are we testing for? Who are we creating for? We have these great ideas, we're testing, we're doing all these things, but, it may solve a problem, but can people actually use it?
Oftentimes we get to a point where we believe that this makes sense and it's going to work for everybody, and you hand it to somebody and they're like, I don't get it. Yeah, then you got a problem.
Are you really solving the problem?
Exactly.
If people can't use it.
We have to remember that none of the challenges that Xfoundry is putting out there are technology challenges. Technologies are part of the solution for solving the problem. At the end of the day, these are human problems. So if the human being can't actually interact with that technology, the technology doesn't do you a damn bit of good.
Well, thank you so much, TJ, for your insight. We really appreciate that. And I think the students will really take that and run with it as they're developing their prototypes, as they're developing and testing it out with different people. Thank you all so much for joining us for another episode of Xstream. I'm Jasmine Kelly, and we'll see you next time.